Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is BRN AM for Thursday, October 22nd, 2020. And our top story today, our audience picked it. We're going to be talking about women's retirement and things that can help women retire safely and independently. Well, joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Cindy Hounsell. She is the president of the Women's Institute for Secured Retirement, better known as Wiser. Cindy, thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Great to be here with you.
It's a pleasure talking with you, and this is a really important topic, and one, by the way, that many of our viewers and listeners have requested. So let's dive right in, because women have historically been challenged in terms of getting a secured retirement. Now, on top of this, we had the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. So how do you and the team at Wiser kind of see this, the landscape? Has it changed? Has it gotten better or worse over the last few months?
Well, I mean, I think it's obviously gotten worse because so many women are worried about their finances, don't have emergency funds, haven't maybe saved enough because, in the beginning of if they have small children at home, they're likely to be saving for those children, rather than their own future retirement. And so, the research sort of shows that women at younger ages, are not like jumping in and saving more. Then I keep saying, we need to show the young women the poverty statistics at age 80 to 85. And maybe that would be a motivator, to make people start paying attention earlier, since
Absolutely.
Right.
And to your point, I mean, women statistically live longer than men.
Right.
So they need to spread that money around. Cindy, if I may, one of the challenges, I think, and I put that families and parents are right behind first responders during this pandemic.
Right.
They have really stepped up here to not only manage the household, perform their jobs, but also be parents and teach children. We have virtual learning, and that really has an impact on women.
Right. Huge. But I think, I see, everybody's doing surveys about a lot of different aspects of the effects of the pandemic. But I see that 70% of women want to go back to work. You know what I mean? Even though you read these other articles saying like they'll never be able to go back to work for a long time because, of the childcare, or, if the pandemic doesn't, begin to sort of take a better turn in the near future. So I think, women who want their careers still want their careers, have always wanted their careers. And, we need to fix those other pieces that make it a little bit easier. So the other thing, being here in Washington, D.C., based in Washington, there's been so much talk about paid family leave. People, that's on the minds of a lot of women.
Yep.
Why can't they get paid family leave for certain things, right? And if they have children. And so that's one aspect of it. And then there's the caregivers. A lot of these same women that are taking care of their children are also sandwich generation. And so they're helping maybe parents or grandparents, or, it probably seems to so many of these women that it just never ends and there aren't enough in the day. And that's
as you're describing it, the word compound really, there's compound, the fundamentals of compound interest and how that can work for you. But if all these things are kind of piled up on you, it kind of compounds itself. And have we made progress? We talk about, let's go back before the pandemic in terms of pay equality, because that's something that I'm sure that has a big factor, I would think, and want to get your perspective on this in terms of how much you can actually save. So if women are being paid historically less than men in the same roles, this could have an impact on how much money you can put away and how much money you're actually going to have in retirement, especially if you're living longer.
Right. And I totally agree with that. The one thing that just, always sticks in my mind, and because I speak at a lot of conferences and also a lot of places where there are, modest income women. I mean, just average women, maybe a family of four earning $50,000, and family of four earning 50 if you live in a city, doesn't make you a millionaire for sure. And it makes it difficult, to save and to pay for childcare, all the things that you have to pay for. But you talk to the audience and you ask them how many, have a retirement plan at work, and many of them don't for whatever reasons. And then, how many are doing anything else and they're not doing something else. But I think part of that goes back to that it's difficult, and the industry hasn't figured this out yet, that people want it to be easy. Just tell me where to go and what to do. Like, give me the address. There's no mutual fund address. People, when I ask a lot of times in these sessions, I'll name 3 of the top, record keepers, and I'm not going to name them here, but we all kind of know them, right? If you're
Sure.
industry. And so what people won't know that. They don't know. And so when I tell people in the industry, they say, oh, well, they don't watch enough football. That's where we advertise, right? So
Yeah.
It's another way that women just sort of leave themselves out of the discussion, or knowing, like, well, this is how I go and I set up an IRA account because I don't have one. My husband may have one, but lots of things can happen. We both need one, or I need an IRA, a spousal IRA. I need to be doing something from the time and not be putting all my eggs in someone else's basket, because we're in too precarious a world for that to happen. I mean, things happen. You look at the statistics, and the story is there. And I'll tell you, I've been working on this issue for a long time. And what sort of got me into the whole thing was that I had a frozen defined benefit plan that was one of the first frozen back in the 80s, and nobody could explain to me what that meant. People at the company really didn't understand it. I mean, it all just sounded like somebody was given some talking points, and but nobody really knew what that meant. Finally, someone said to me, what it means is, you need to look for another job. You're young enough to have a second career. And, long story short, I ended up coming to Washington on a fellowship. And this issue just fascinated me, because then I realized I'm going to be one of those poor statistics. I'm not doing anything. I just got divorced. I just changed careers, and so it sort of, I don't know, it sort of prompted this passion in me to be telling other women, we have to take care of ourselves, stop just doing everything for everybody else. Take a minute and think about what you're going to do. So.
Absolutely. Well, I want to go to a quick commercial break because you bring up a really good point. But when we come back, we're going to talk to Cindy about financial literacy and things that women and those of us in the industry and outside the industry can do to make things better for women and everyone else. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Hi folks, Joe Namath here, and if you're on Medicare, this is important. You're now entitled to eliminate copays and get dental care, dentures, eyeglasses, prescription coverage, in-home aids, unlimited transportation, and home-delivered meals, all at no additional cost. Plus, your zip code may have coverage with the Give Back benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every month. Look, with the uncertainty of the virus and vaccines, you need to get everything you're entitled to. Here's the bottom line. Call to get significant benefits at no additional cost and see if your zip code has coverage with the Give Back benefit. Millions of people have trusted the Medicare Coverage Helpline. You can too. Call now. It's free.
Call 1-800-924-3920. That's 1-800-924-3920.
Welcome back. We're talking to Cindy Hounsell of Wiser. Cindy, thank you so much for staying with us this morning.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I'm glad to be here.
It's our privilege, and thank you. This is a very important issue, and it's great to have you on because you've been working on this issue for such a long time, and you've been making some great progress. And you seem to talk towards the end of the first segment, about, kind of talk about financial literacy. And you spend a lot of time pre-COVID, and I'm sure you're doing it through Zoom meetings, et cetera, going to conferences and informing women. Is there still a literacy gap? And if there is, how do we fill that? How do we get young women, mature women, people just to understand basic financial implications?
Well, and I think, you've just said it. It's hard because there's not a lot of the basics. I mean, there are a zillion books, there's lots of great articles, et cetera, but you need a foundation. I keep saying and I've done this with different groups of women. And when we chose this nurses project, the nurses were the most well-educated. And yet, once we taught them the basics, most of them said, I don't know anything, I can't do this, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, I know this stuff, and lots of people know pieces of it, but they think they don't know anything. So you ask the 5 guys and they say, do you know this and this and this? And they go, yeah, I know all that. And then you go to the women and then they say, no, they don't know, or they don't know like one word. And so then they say, they answer all the questions. I don't know. I can't be an investor, whatever it is. So I think what the industry can do and people in their communities is say work and have programs at libraries, just doing the basics. We have a lot of people out there that are retired that are looking to do things, right? That can explain basics to people. And libraries need money and funding and all of that. So that's one example that I've seen work really well, which FINRA had a number of these projects years ago, and I'm not sure whether they still exist, but I think it's a great model for everyone that wants to do something in their community. So
Yeah, and I think in the industry, we make things a little bit more complicated, or a lot more complicated than they need to be. I mean, these are basic things that I think you can learn. If you haven't learned them in school, you learn them in college, or you learn them in a trade, and you start to understand the basics of budgeting. And you learn that savings is really a time game. It's
Right.
putting money away incrementally over a long period of time. And if you start early, if you're a young woman or a young man and you're just starting your career, it's better to start now. You're going to be in a much better spot when you hit age 65 or age 70, or if you choose to work longer, you're going to be in a better spot. I think we try to make things really complicated that don't necessarily need to be.
Right. Well, and it's also, I'm very sympathetic because it's compliance often, that just says, no, you can't say that, or you can't do this or whatever. So
Yeah.
I'm not a CPA or anything. So we can just tell women, get in there, start saving,
Yeah, just put it away. Don't put it under the mattress because it's
Exactly.
not safe and it's not
Right.
insured. You can put it into a bank. Cindy, you're in the capital of the country in Washington, D.C. What are things, where obviously there's a lot going on in Washington, D.C. about COVID, the CARES Act. We had the Secure Act, which was really designed to improve coverage. And you mentioned this in the first segment about millions and millions, about 70 million people that are uncovered by employer-based retirement plans. But what are some of the steps that you and the folks at Wiser and your affiliates believe that maybe policymakers and regulators should think about once we get through all this election mess and this COVID mess?
Well, I think making, emergency funds is like really come to the fore, and, a lot of, the industry folks have come forth and, are putting money into like how to make this happen and how to make it easier for people. It's just, there are people outside the system. There are people that don't have employers, financial wellness plans. And those are the people that, we all have to be thinking about. How do we help educate some of the masses that are eager to save and to get help, but it's not so easy to access for them. So I think it's great once a number of these issues comes to the front, and I think emergency savings is clearly one. Then that'll make a difference, and hopefully it'll get out, and other people will want those opportunities in the same way. I mean, the other thing that I think is a great example of this is, and I'm a big proponent of this, is the saver tax credit. And I've seen research, Transamerica did some research recently. 65% of women don't even know that there is a saver tax credit. And, that's really important to take advantage of something like that.
Yeah. And that's something that I'm just thinking a lot of people complete their taxes online. They may hire a CPA, but that's something a CPA should certainly tell you. Or if you're using tax prep software, which many people do, it should say, are you at this threshold for income? You should sign up for this tax credit. I think what a lot of it comes down to, and what I'm hearing, Cindy, just based on your accumulated knowledge, is that a lot of this is about communication.
Right,
and we need to
definitely.
do a better job of reaching people. We've got these great phones and devices. How do we reach people? Because people are clearly using their phones more. You walk across the street, you're not even looking where you're going. You're
Right.
listening to a podcast, or you're watching something on YouTube or whatever, or maybe you're watching this network, hopefully. But I think that we've got to figure out better ways to push information to people, and also receive feedback as well.
Right. I agree. Totally.
Yeah. Well, Cindy, we're going to leave it here. Thank you so much for the work that you've done with Wiser over the past 2+ decades. And we look forward to having you back on the program very soon.
Great to be here. I appreciate it.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to? Then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Waiting here for you to take and drink of. But if you're tired of the same.
Are you being audited, and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.